Hey everyone, after multiple requests, here it finally is, a 15-minute video that will explain more to you about the personal statement than some college counselors that you pay tens of thousands of dollars for. So before we get started and you guys go, why should I trust this guy? Let me explain. I'm Nate, I got rejected from my dream school in early action, and 3 months later I got accepted to multiple Ivies. And the only thing that changed within that time period was my personal statement. This is the part of the college application that everybody stresses over. And it's true, the personal statement is important, which is why today in this video, I'm going to explain how to approach the personal statement, the biggest mistakes I made, and then the framework I used to take my personal statement from mid to Ivy level. So we're clear, I didn't have legacy, I didn't donate a building, and I definitely didn't do anything crazy in high school like cure cancer. But I still got into Brown, Columbia, and some other top schools, just because this is the framework I used to hit at exactly what colleges are looking for. For starters, I have my phone here with a few different notes on what I want to cover in today's video. The first one is the basics. For those of you starting the college application process, the personal statement is a 650-word essay that goes out to every single school that you apply to through the Common App. It's meant to give the readers a sense of who you are beyond just your resume. So keep in mind, the rest of the Common App is mostly your awards, your activities list, and then some other parts about your background. So there's the key right there, is that the personal statement isn't supposed to be a list of achievements because that's already covered in your awards. And it's not meant to be an analysis of your academics because that's already covered in your transcript. The personal statement is the only part where you can show the reader how you think, who you are, basically exactly what you have that make colleges want to accept you. So before we talk about how I approach the personal statement, let's talk about 3 myths that I see a lot of people making before they even start writing. The first myth is that your essay has to be dramatic. It really doesn't. You don't need to have survived a war, or climbed Mount Everest, or done something crazy by starting a startup or some AI company. You don't need to write about something life-changing like a sports injury, or a death in the family, or a once-in-a-lifetime crisis. Unless that experience genuinely shaped who you are today, like in an actual, real, meaningful way. If it did, go ahead and write about that. But from my experience, those stories are written about so often that unless you come at it from a new angle, it can blend into the rest of the pack. Honestly, some of the best essays I've seen are written about completely random topics. I've seen one written about going to Costco and another one written about somebody's love for kitchen appliances. It's weird, random things like that nobody else would think of that tend to do the best in personal statements. The second myth is that your essay has to be emotional or impressive. You're already trying to be impressive in every other part of your application. This is the one place where you can just be real. So trust me, honesty will beat being over-polished every single time. If you're listing off your accolades or end up writing even crazy words that are so long just to sound cool, you're probably doing it wrong. Admissions officers honestly don't want perfection. They just want to see your personality come through. The third myth is that you have to pick the perfect prompt, and I've seen a lot of people stressed out over this, but here's the truth. The Common App gives you 7 different prompts to choose from. And one of them literally says to share an essay on any topic of your choice. And this isn't supposed to be a trick. You can literally write your personal statement about anything. So don't box yourself in before writing by trying to find the perfect prompt that you can write about. Just write the story you need to tell, and then find the prompt afterwards that best fits it. So now that we've talked about what the personal statement isn't, let's talk about what actually works. Here is the framework that I used to write the personal statement that got me into Brown and multiple Ivies. I call it MAP, moment, angle, purpose. The first one, moment. Start with an actual moment, an actual story. I know the personal statement is supposed to talk about your traits, your personality, your growth, but in my opinion, it's kind of hard to start with this because you can probably use a ton of personal traits to describe you. So instead, think about some small moment that nobody else can write about. And I'm not gonna lie, my childhood was pretty boring, so I found it pretty hard to write about cool stories. So I ended up deciding on something random that happened on a certain day. Literally, your stories can be just like that. It can be something that happened within a 5-minute time block like 10 years ago, right? It doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't need to be life-changing, doesn't need to be long, doesn't need to be incredibly important. It just needs to be something specific that isn't a vague idea or a list of details. A specific, grounded moment that reveals something deeper about you. Here's an example from my essay. I remember a time when the neighborhood kids whizzed around on their bikes, sun-kissed and carefree, their laughter trailing behind them like music in the warm air. However, my summer found me not on 2 wheels, but rather on my 2 feet, sprinting to keep up, the soles of my sandals wearing thin with every chase. So that small moment didn't feel impressive at the time, but it became the anchor for the rest of my essay, because it shows this small moment in my life that sets the scene for the growth that I want to talk about in the rest of the personal statement. For the rest of my essay, I talked about how I watched my sister learn how to ride a bike before I believed that I could do it myself, and how that sets the stage for everything that I've done since. The second step, A, is for angle. Once you have your moment, ask, what does that story say about me? What value does it reveal about me? Using my own essay, I probably could have spun that story into talking about fear or perseverance or courage, but instead I chose to focus on self-belief. Here's how that came through in my essay. Doubt whispered that I couldn't do it without my sister's bike, but something inside me knew better. I had done it once, I could do it again. See, the same story can reveal totally different things about you depending on how you spin it. That's why it's way easier to start with a moment, then talk about values, as opposed to the other way around. Last step, P, is for purpose. This is where you zoom out. Why does the story matter? How does it shape the way you think? And ultimately, what does it show about me that would make a college want to accept me? You don't need to hit people over the head with it. You don't need some dramatic in-conclusion paragraph, but your essay should end with some kind of takeaway, or a moment of reflection that shows how you've thought about this and how you've grown since then. So for me, that looked like this. Little did I know, I learned much more than riding a bike that day. When I look back at that summer, I see a boy who discovered that the toughest part of any journey is trusting that you have what it takes, even when it feels impossible. Okay, so that is the MAP method. It's how you go from writing something generic and not specific to writing something actually about you that makes college counselors not forget. So now that you have your moment, your angle, and your purpose, where do you go from here? Honestly, this is the part of writing where most people, myself included, typically get stuck. Actually turning it into a full essay, well, that's where you need to talk about writing style and structure. Let's talk about style first. Some of the best personal statements read like short stories, and that's not because the authors are trying to make them sound like a novel, but it's because they do use the same devices like imagery, voice, and details to make their story come alive. So you don't need to be dramatic, but it just means that the reader should be able to see what you saw and feel how you felt. You can write it in a serious tone or a humorous one. You can be reflective, sarcastic, poetic, straightforward. Honestly, there's no real right way to do it. The only rule is this, that regardless of what you do, it should sound like you. Here's what I mean by that. If you're the kind of person that when talking with your friends starts to make weird, obscure analogies, that should come through in the essay. If the people around you always say that you crack the best jokes or tell the best stories, those should come out in the essay as well. The goal isn't to impress the reader with long words, but it's to connect with the reader and show them a little bit more about you. Now let's talk structure. There's no single format for the personal statement, but here are a few different structures I've seen do well. The first one is the narrative essay. This is the most classic structure. One story told from beginning all the way into the end with reflection built in, and that shows growth throughout the entire story. It works great if you have a strong central moment that changed your life or revealed something cool about you. This is personally the structure I chose for my essay. The second structure is the montage essay. So instead of one big story, you tie together multiple smaller stories that revolve around a certain theme or value. Think of it like a highlight reel or a collage. It can be structured by time, topic, metaphor, or something totally different. Here are a few examples that I've seen. A playlist where each song connects to a different memory. Stickers on your laptop with each representing a different part of your personality. Magnets on a fridge, each coming from a different place you've gone to in the world. Or snapshots from different moments that all relate to one of your goals. The third structure is the object-based essay. This is a bit of a more creative take, where you build the essay around a physical object, concept, or habit. Maybe your essay revolves around your journal, your lunchbox, your Google search history, maybe your Netflix watch list. Honestly, whatever gives insight into how you think and what you're interested in. Regardless of which structure you choose though, remember, the structure should support your story and not the other way around. So pick the one that gives you the most freedom to express what matters after you've already planned out your moment, your angle, and your purpose. And remember, the best essays don't try to say everything. They just say one thing very well. So if you're going to choose the montage essay, for example, don't choose 5 different stories that aren't related. Choose all of them that tell the story about one aspect of you. So now that we've gone over framework and structure, I just wanted to give some personal tips for the personal statement. These are answers to questions that I had a lot when I was writing mine, and so let's run through them. The first question is, how many drafts should I write? Honestly, from experience, way more than you think. I think most personal statements typically go through 2 to 3 full drafts. And I don't mean grammar fixes or shifting around words, I mean full rewrites. So for my essay, I wrote it about 3 times before I finally landed on a version that felt right. And I don't mean do this all with the same idea. You can change up the idea, change up the structure, anything like that. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but honestly, going through multiple drafts multiple times is super helpful for figuring out what you're looking for in writing about yourself. And the unused drafts can be helpful in crafting supplemental essays in the future. The second question is, how should I edit my drafts? First, let it sit for a few days. Don't touch it for a day or 2, and then read it out loud. You'll catch awkward phrasing or ideas that don't make sense or are too long or too short. After that, you can get real feedback. So share it with 2 to 3 people you really trust, like your teachers, friends, family members, mentors, anything like that. And ask them, what did you actually learn about me in this essay? Does it sound like me? Are there any ideas that are too short or too long? Don't just ask if it's good. Now keep in mind, the more people you share this essay with, the more opinions you'll get, and sometimes the opinions may be conflicting. So ultimately it's up to you whose advice you want to take and what you want the final version of the essay to look like. Next question is, what if I go over the word limit? So the Common App cuts you off at 650 words. So if you go over that, it won't even let you submit. But even before that, when you're writing, my recommendation is write however long you please and use however many words you want. It's always better to get the ideas down and then cut afterwards than cut while you're writing. When you do cut, look for anything that repeats the same idea or anything that doesn't actually move your story forward. You can use contractions, you can trim filler, just get to the point. I know that was a ton of information and you're probably intimidated. But what I found is if you take your time, trust your story, and literally just try it out by putting pen to paper, you'll be surprised with what you can come up with. If you still have questions after this while you're writing, drop them in the comments and I'll try my best to answer every single one. You've got this, keep writing, and I'll see you in the next one.